Hello everybody, it's George from Ireland. Thank you for coming back to the channel again. And in this video, I'm going to ask, what if Labour succeeds and how Labour could succeed over the next 5 years? Now, I think it's highly likely Labour's going to win the next election, but I don't mean just win marginally, but triumph, have a landslide, maybe even greater than this last time. Moreover, to get a higher plurality of the vote. Labour won with a measly 34 percentage points, much lower than anybody forecast. Remember, a couple of months ago, the opinion polls had them on 46%, and Labour got to be worried about that low turnout, and the turnout probably go down even lower again. Remember, equivalent of 1997 last time, and the forthcoming election will be equivalent to 2001, and obviously Labour's usually hurt by poor turnout. But Labour might be lucky with the economy. Economic growth might speed up, but partly because countries are weathering the storm of the Ukraine war. They're diversifying energy, renewables. The more renewables are becoming cheaper. That's especially going to be so given the commendable decision the Labour government made about allowing onshore wind. So, and obviously, energy is vital to everything we do. Electricity, heating, lighting, electric cars, increasingly electric trains in most cases, even electric buses and computers, all sorts of machinery is to do with energy. And house building really speed up, and that's a real indicator of economic health, making housing affordable and therefore giving people more of a disposable income to spend on other goods and services. And that would be a greater tax take and things like that. So there's more money to spend on the National Health Service, on the armed forces, on education, on leveling up, improving roads, railways, everything else, without having to increase taxation. In fact, they are going to increase taxation. They might even be able to ease it off, but they also have to be lucky with the global situation. And moreover, if business knows that Labour's there to stay, that Keir Starmer is going to see out the 5 years and maybe even take a further 5 years after that, that these policies are going to continue. If there's predictability, they're more likely to invest. And that just increased confidence. There'll be the feel-good factor. People are able to spend, employers willing to hire more people. And that will redound to the advantage of the economy. The European Union was saying this almost openly, that they would welcome a Labour victory because they see the Conservatives being the party of Brexit somewhat of adversarial. Now, the Ukraine war took the edge off that because they say, well, come on, the Tories compared to Putin, there's no contest, that they're not evil, they're not that bad. But I mean, Labour was an even more Europhile party than the Conservative Party, and they don't propose rejoining the European Union, but they do want to build bridges. Been received fairly cordially. But there are hardline right wingers who've won elections in the Netherlands and almost won in France. They're in Slovakia, where else? Hungary. So it wouldn't be that easy for them to get any sort of sweetheart deal from the European Union. Remember, the trade deal has to be renegotiated next year anyway. But there could be some better trade agreement. But that might involve free movement from the European Union. But Labour might be willing to say yes to that. Whereas very hard to see Labour succeeding, there was immigration, both legal and illegal. They said they get it down. But remember, Labour voters are less put off by that. They think they say they don't really mind, whereas Conservative voters say that unchecked immigration can be damaging. But what else? More young people with skills boosting the economy. That's great. Where another area I don't see Labour succeeding, they're not even talking about succeeding, is this dependency culture. Over 9 million adults economically inactive is increased under the Conservative Party disgracefully. Is going to increase Labour even more, because if you ever say, come on, we need to get tough on this, and say, oh, you're so cruel and these people really are disabled, we have to be a caring society and look after them and give them money for nothing. But anyway, if they could just stop messing around the curriculum, schools would know what they're doing for once. I remember the only good policy that the Corbyn had was to abolish Ofsted, the Office for Standards in Education, the whole ones that produce reams and reams of paperwork, pointless inspection. So take the stress out of teaching, bring the joy back into it by debureaucratizing it and recruiting those 6,500 teachers. Maybe they'll succeed. More money to spend, big higher salaries. Salaries are only part of it, as well as increasing salaries for doctors, nurses, and whoever else, so that there's no staff shortage and they're treating patients in the NHS at an earlier stage. We all know that stitch in time saves 9. If the patients present earlier, if there's an early intervention, the condition is much more likely to be cured. or even not cured, managed more successfully, blah, blah, blah. What else? And also just paying the armed forces more, expanding more. That's more military manufacturing. That'll boost the defense base. Have to build more prisons. I know they might reduce the amount of time people spend in prison, release them after 40% of their sentence in most cases. Build more prisons, especially economically depressed areas of northeast England, quite a Labour voting area, which would create jobs. That's what I do. Military bases, build them in places of high unemployment, create jobs as cleaners, as cooks, as whatever. The soul is spending some of their money in the local community. How else could they succeed? I mean, if Ukraine wins, that would also be good for them. The only thing they have to give the Conservatives credit for is their Ukrainian policy. And then the Ukrainian refugees might feel confident to go home in a few years' time. I think most of them want to stay here, even if Ukraine wins, because Ukraine is going to be wrecked and they will have spent several years here. For some children, this will be home by that stage. How else could Labour succeed? Well, their wokery has almost totally taken over the public sector already, is going to go even further. And that's really just indoctrinating children into being anti-conservative, voting, if not Labour, Liberal Democrat, SNP, Green, something like that. They could reform the electoral system, but then why would they, as this system has worked so well for them? On 34% of the vote they got was at 65% of the seats. It's never been so disproportional. But on the other hand, they know if they did that, they could form coalitions with the Liberal Democrats, with the Greens, and there might never be another Conservative government again. They're likely to win the Holyrood election in 2 years' time, and will win the next election to the Welsh Parliament. That'll be 7 out of 7. And what else? So they're more money for levelling up. Will they one day be able to complete high speed 2 all the way to Manchester? I don't see it myself. It'd be a triumph for them. Remember, it's a Labour-dominated city. And say, Southern England gets so much. How about Northern England? They could succeed on that one. Could the United Kingdom apply to host the Olympic Games again? Have to go to a Northern English city like Liverpool or Leeds or Newcastle. I think Leeds is probably the best one. I mean, Glasgow, could go to Scotland instead. The Commonwealth Games, I think, who's had it? Glasgow's had it once, Edinburgh twice, Cardiff once, London at least once, Manchester once. Give it to Belfast, and Northern Ireland could host it. So those ways they could succeed. What other areas could they possibly succeed on? Like I said, renationalising public transport would be quite popular if it brought the rail fares down. On crime, we really just more police officers. And a much more expensive approach, especially in the short term, sort of German-Swedish approach to rehabilitation. That prison's mostly about that, but it costs way more. Very highly trained prison officers trained in psychology to actually be pleasant and turn bad people into good people. And it's astonishingly successful. Not in every single case, but it's eye-wateringly expensive. But in the long run, that's a saving, is the argument, because the crime rate is much lower. So these are ways in which they could succeed. And then improving public health by taking away people's right to smoke. So things could go well for Labour, and they could win a much higher share of the vote next time, and an even higher majority. So, and Reform UK is not going to disappear. I think it'll decline, but it won't disappear. So Conservatives cannot be complacent and assume that everybody for them this time will vote for them again. And by heavily thumping the Conservatives this time and doing some next time to prove that voters meant it, it was no aberration. But that's why I think the Labour is going to be in office for about 20 years. It could be even longer. They made some terrible strategic blunders in their history, Labour, but maybe this time, with their ultra-cautious policy, they're going to get it right. And they'd steal the clothes of the Greens, and the Lib Dems wouldn't have much to complain about. Right, thank you so much for watching. Who works in the corporate allyship, forcing him. Goodness, I honestly don't know what to do. I'm not working in corporate setting, because if you speak the truth, that's it. You'll be terminated. You are not entitled to an opinion, but the leftist bigots can ram it down your throat. So I struggle to come up with any more helpful advice than that, I'm afraid. All right, thank you for watching. Please make sure you subscribe on Patreon, donate on PayPal. Good night.